I just got back from a lovely trip on the Milky Way.
Jonathan Stout.
Bobby White.
You have made a Christmas album, and I have to say, it swings like nothing else. Like, it is such a swinging album. When I was listening to it, I realized that you don't play these songs like they're holiday songs, like in all caps, like holiday songs. You play them as if they're just another song with great jazz melodies and riffs. And like for Hanukkah is just an all-out slapper of a swing song, and that had to be on purpose, right? Like you had to. That was probably a goal, I imagine.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing is the whole idea of this album started pretty organically, which is, we would play Christmas dances or holiday dances with the band, and it seemed odd when it was like a holiday themed dance to just not play any holiday music, especially when there's so much vintage holiday music from that era. And so I just started kind of adding tunes to the book, things like Rudolph, and Let It Snow, but then it was also like, the holidays can be a time where like it can be a little not inclusive, so I didn't want to like shove Christmas down everybody's throats, so like we also started adding stuff that was like kind of wintry, or things that have become holiday songs that aren't necessarily like I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm, or Button Up Your Overcoat, and so that's Irving Berlin with I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm, so it's already a great jazz song, but it just kind of came about organically, and like everything we do, like I'm a Lindy Hopper and a Balboa dancer, and our bands create music specifically for our community to dance to. Like that's why this band exists. And so rather than doing things that were like cutesy or were like kind of corny in that holiday way, like, because hey, it's the holidays, we can have an excuse to do that, I kind of try to just make solid, good dance music. And I'll never forget, there was this one dance where it was a holiday dance, and the DJ just managed to play every song they DJ'd was a holiday song on the breaks, but it was never like a good version of anything. And I know that there are people that love Christmas music, holiday music, that as soon as, Halloween is over, they're immediately putting that stuff on. Even as soon as like Labor Day is over, they're like, quick, I'm gonna have 3 months of the holidays. But then there's other people that are like suffering through, like, oh, here we go again. Like if you've ever worked in retail, God, I've got to help you. I'm sure it's been brutal. But so I just wanted to make something that like it just swung and was fun to dance to, and wasn't something that was suffered through because it happens to be December. And I'm really excited that, I think in retrospect, it doesn't sound, like you said, it doesn't sound as overtly holiday as it might. I thought about putting sleigh bells on as in like adding them after the fact, or like having Josh play some sleigh bells at one point, and he amusingly was like, eh. But I was like, no, we gotta stick them on somewhere. We don't have to like overlay them over every track, because we could have like overdubbed sleigh bells the entire record, so it would be like, here is the Christmas, you're gonna accept this. And it was a fairly good idea that he was like, I don't think that's a good idea. Or like we could have gotten sleigh bells that would like ride on his hi-hat, so every time he like chicked his hi-hat, it would like clink. And we didn't do that, but as it turned out, I hadn't decided on the sequencing of the album, but he said, well, how about we put it at the intro to Santa Claus Is Coming to Town, because it's got this nice kind of chimes thing in the piano. And that was like, yeah, that's good, and it'll drop out basically after 4 or 8 bars. And then he was like, yeah, there's this like thumpity thump thump thumpity thump thump outro on Frosty, and he's like, yeah, and let's put them on there. And then as it turns out, that was the perfect kind of opening and closing to the album. So you have the sleigh bells at the beginning, sleigh bells at the end, but the rest of it isn't like super hardcore, like corny Christmas stuff. Yeah,
fantastic accident.
And with the Hanukkah song, like, I really feel like I hear enough of my Jewish friends being like, there isn't as much good Hanukkah music out there as there ought to be. And I know there's like an entire album that this like 50s crooner guy did of Hanukkah swing stuff, but it's kind of, 50s crooner vibe. And I was like, oh man, it would be great if there was like some good swing Hanukkah stuff. And um, what I realized is you kind of need to reharmonize those traditional songs, which is exactly what all of the great swing artists did when they did classical melodies or traditional melodies. They, it wasn't like there's a dumb thing in the Hanukkah where, and I mean, not that it's dumb. I mean, it's like a minor thing is what I mean. I'm not saying the melody of this this Jewish song is dumb. That's not what I mean. But like, it's like, where like it resolves very quickly back to the one. And I think I listened to a bunch of jazz versions of that song and noticed that several of them just kind of hung on that chord, which is what every jazz song would do. Like it would hang on that chord and then resolve in the next bar, as opposed to like forcing you to go back. And the melody wasn't implying one or the other. And I came across the Boilermakers version, and they kind of just did like kind of a minor vamp through the whole song. And then there was a different version that like for the first 8 bars, it was minor, but then it went into major the next phrase. And it very much reminded me of Irving Berlin coming up again, Irving Berlin's Russian Lullaby, where the second phrase of Russian Lullaby goes to the major. And I was like, oh, that's my way in, because we did a Russian Lullaby on our last record, and I was like, okay, that's the way to do it. And I ended up writing the arrangement on the night in between the 2 days that we recorded, because I just hadn't, even though this album's kind of been planned for almost 13 years now, like we've been meaning to do this, and it was just a matter of like coalescing enough songs. That was sort of the last piece to fall into the puzzle. And so I was writing it the night before, and when I heard the Boilermakers version, which is very much like clarinet over tom tom, sing 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 kind of feel, I was like, okay, well, I don't want to do that, because that's that version. I don't want to bite off, that thing. And when we recorded it, Josh was like, it'd be really cool if we did like a tom tom thing here. And I said, okay, here's my issue. I don't want to, rip off Paul's thing, because we love Paul and the Boilermakers. So that's what I'm just worried about. He's like, well, what if we just do it like the first 8 bars, and then we'll go to swing time, and then we'll go back to the toms, and then, like we can kind of come and go with it, so it's not just like consistent. I was like, all right, done. So it was a really nice natural collaboration with Josh. And, I come in with an idea, and all the rest of the guys in the band will like be like, well, what about this? Great. So anyway, that's sort of like how that Hanukkah song came to be. And it was sort of a conscious choice to make sure that it was a banger, So, but now I think if we ever do a volume 2, I have to make sure that there's like 2 or 3 solid medium tempo Hanukkah songs, because, I know what DJs do at most dances, and it's not like banger after banger after banger. It's like, give me that solid, nice social dance tempo. So I got to give some more of those.
Something that really struck out to me about kind of like that spirit of this album, about how like it's great swing music through the spirit of holiday music, is how in the Button Up Your Overcoat at that very end there, it just goes into this really aggressive like final shout chorus feeling. And I just remember thinking like, oh yeah,
oh yeah,
button up your overcoat. I would never in my brain have like thought of that, and like it felt so organic, and like again, just a great example of how like it swings.
Some of those things are written just sort of like ad lib. Like I'm like, here's the chords, blow, and exactly how they handle that, like Jim and Albert, is something that I never really know, but they kind of. What I notice is that the two of them kind of settle into some kind of not a routine with it, but they sort of like know what the vibe is, and they kind of figure it out. It's kind of those things that are unwritable. And when they decide to go for the jugular, I'm like, yep, go for it. Because one of the things that I've noticed about arranging is it's almost like acting, and you're directing somebody, and you kind of need to lead them into a place where they can deliver the thing with sincerity. So, I don't mean you have to be all Daniel Day-Lewis about it, but like, you kind of want to set them up to do the thing that you're hoping that they'll do, but you're not trying to like box them into a thing like, now do the trick, do the dance, monkey. Like, that's not what you don't want to like force them into something. You just kind of want to lead them organically into it. So there's a couple tunes like Rudolph, it's ad lib at the end, but then they kind of come together for the tag, and like little things like that. It's all about kind of, okay, all right, I hope if I put the ramp right here, they'll jump over the canyon all by themselves.
Yeah, no, man, that's fantastic. So you mentioned that this is arranged by you and your band, right? Or like you did the arrangements, and I think Jim did some of the arrangements. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, the thing that's weird about this record, or at least new, is typically, if you look at our first couple albums, almost all of them were almost all the songs were transcriptions of like the Benny Goodman sextet version of this song, or like when we did Just a Little Bit South of North Carolina, it's like it's a direct lift of the Krupa O'Day version, just played with two horns instead of a big band. And starting about 10 years ago, we really started to move away from that. And so like the last album we did, Hum to Myself, I think it was like 50-50 things that were kind of from some source material, whether or not it was like a direct lift or whether it was kind of like slightly altered, but then the other half was like stuff that was fully original. And so this is the first thing we've done where like all of the arrangements are not from some other thing from the past. And
So
that's,
so
yeah.
walk us through for someone who doesn't know much about jazz arrangement, like what does that mean when you say that you had to make an original arrangement?
Well, like, if you take the song Rose Room that Benny Goodman and Charlie Krishna recorded, there's an intro that they play, and they played it every time. And then the song starts. And then there's like what happens in the song just as a laundry list. And that's basically how, when we play Rose Room, that's how we play Rose Room. We play it just like Benny did, and Charlie. And the solo order is the same, all that stuff. That's a very simple song because other than that intro that's written, the rest of it is just sort of ad-libbed. But there are many songs we've done where we just kind of did exactly that, like do the standard intro and then kind of do the order of solos as it was. And then, but like with this Christmas stuff, there wasn't that many examples of like really great, like late 30s, early 40s swing feel Rudolph. Like Rudolph was written, a little too late for there to be a great Benny Goodman version with Gene Krupa on drums, and so it's like, well, you have to make one. And so all of those choices of like, who's going to play the melody? Are they going to trade off? Is there going to be what comes next? All of those were, from scratch. And one of the things that was a big inspiration, that I stuck a lot in, especially on this holiday music, was one of my other guitar heroes besides Charlie Christian is this guy, Alan Roos, who played with Benny Goodman in the kind of peak 35 to 38 band. And he's on a bunch of Lionel Hampton small group records. And he would always have the little interlude that would change key. And he's famously on I'm Beginning to See the Light, the Harry James version. He has this 4-bar intro, and then there's a 4-bar key change that he also plays, and he's got the ending. And I was really inspired by Alan. So there's a lot of times where the key that an instrumentalist would want to play the song in, because they're going to play the melody, is not the same as, say, a female vocalist typically would want to sing it in. And so I need a bridge to get there. So I would maybe think of doing an Alan Roos type of chordal guitar key change. But yeah, I mean, then some of the stuff that was done later, like Winter Weather or Little Jack Frost, those have all of these like written concerted melodies of like an intro, a key change, an outro, that those were just from whole cloth. And that's just a very not typically Jonathan Stout thing to do. Like, I'm like, quick, let's go find what Benny Goodman did or what Count Basie did, and let's just do that because that's better. But over the last 10 years, it's been this kind of slow change from just slowly transcription stuff to really embracing being a part of the tradition.
Oh, I just love it. So am I correct in thinking of it that like you have the melody and the lyrics of the song if it has lyrics, and you just kind of like strip away everything and then build everything up on top of that and around it?
Well, it's more that you have to take that melody and those chords and decide what you want to do with it. Because, if you're doing Button Up Your Overcoat, do you want it with like a toy trumpet sound? Da, 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 or do you want like a big fat tenor? Da, 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 and like and then where do you want that to go? And then how many different things is it going to go through? It's like, I think I've said before that like a lot of our songs have a very similar arc depending on the tempo. And it's kind of like Campbell type archetypes. Like there's the hero's journey, there's the there's this, and like like the medium tempo songs, a lot of them start kind of medium dynamic wise, mezzo forte or mezzo piano, and kind of like build to a peak and then kind of settle back. Call that the there and back approach, and then like especially the hotter songs tend to like start medium to a little above medium, hit a peak, get quiet, and then get loud again, because you gotta like which one of those approaches are you going to use, and which variation, and is it going to be Jesus, or is it going to be Harry Potter, or is it going to be Luke Skywalker? Which particular flavor of hero's journey of it turns out you are the chosen one story are you going to do on that song? And so yeah, it's like with Button Up Your Overcoat, I don't remember when we decided that was going to be a duet, but like I needed to build in time for Jim to get to a microphone on stage. So like there's got to be some kind of thing before the vocal comes in so that he could be in place. And then, and that ends up being like, okay, well, if he's going to sing Christmas Time in Los Angeles, I need to give him time to get to the microphone. So maybe he's not going to play the melody on the beginning, or there needs to be some kind of interlude in between. All of those little choices, and like, are you going to go out hard, or are you going to go out soft, or all of those choices. And then, like I said, the thing that was really atypical for me is I think there's one shout chorus on there that's like written. It's not just an ad lib thing, and that's like from whole cloth. I mean, as much as anything you do in like this like a traditional jazz style is not like sort of borrowed from Louis Armstrong at some point somewhere, but like I can't remember. That must be Little Jack Frost. But like that whole thing, I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna write a shout chorus, and it's not going to be a lift from something else. And like I said, that's weird. That's not how we typically operate. But I think the last 10 years has really been a sea change in sort of how we approach our place in playing swing music for dancers, and like whether or not the best thing we can do at any given moment is just play exactly what Benny Goodman or Count Basie did.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about that journey?
Yeah, part of it sort of started when we started traveling to Europe, and when we started, only like the deepest cut DJs would have tunes like Stuffy or Squatty Roo or Gotta Do Some War Work, or like some of those deeper cut small group tunes that we kind of started the band with. And but over the course of the next like 10-15 years, probably not only because of us playing them, but like everybody all of a sudden had access to so much more music. And so it was a lot easier for people to find deep cut songs anymore. So the fact that we were curating them became less novel. And obviously, like, I've got people like Josh Collazo and Chris Dawson and Albert and Jim, and, you know, like, they're going to play it at a high level, but at a certain point, that song selection of those, it's like a hip hop DJ digging the crates. It's like all of a sudden, if everybody knows that where you got that record and they all buy that record, you're not special for finding that record anymore. And that's tough. And I remember I found this song, Black Market Stuff, and it was an all-star group that was full of real gunners: Charlie Shavers, Buddy Rich, Nat Cole on piano, who people don't know, Nat Cole was like a killer piano player. And then this tenor player named Herbie Hamer, who was in the Harry James band, but, you know, it's just a young white saxophone player that's not that famous, but he's got like these amazing gunners on it. And it's just a great little perfect medium Lindy Hop tune. And I found it on YouTube. So I didn't even find the record or the CD, because I'm not a record guy, but I did a transcription of it. I was so excited. And it was, for whatever reason, I couldn't do the transcription myself. So I actually had hired somebody to do the transcription, because there was some part of it that I couldn't quite hear and it was driving me nuts. And I realized if I was ever going to do it, I would just have to have somebody else do that for me. But then we went to Bordeaux, and the other band that we had to play alongside with had just come out with their CD, and that was the title track to their CD. And I was like, if my value is dependent on my curation, everybody else seems to have access to the same stuff now. And if they're beating me to the punch, I mean, like, really, that's not good. And I mean, I remember that gig just being like personally kind of miserable, not that anybody's fault, but like half of their repertoire was the stuff we play. And they were pretty much doing like basically the same arrangements as we were. And I was like, wow, crap. You know, this is not good, because, you know, if you're doing apples to apples, and, you know, and you're not the best apple in any given moment, like, that's not good. Like, part of what I can do is, you know, be a really good apple in a world of oranges. Like that, I'm happy with it. And for many, many years, there were so few like real swing bands. There were a million trad bands or like later jazz bands playing for dancers, but there weren't really that many like really true swing bands. And now you've got, you know, Michael Gamble, and you've got, you know, the Mid Julep Jazz Band, and people like Naomi, and it's like there's a lot more like real swing being played for dancers by modern musicians. So that was part of it, and part of it was also just that, like, at a certain point, if I'm just going to play the same transcriptions they're going to play, it just becomes a battle of who can play it harder, louder, and faster. And having done band battles in the past that just, I think, sucked as an attendee, I think playing harder and louder and faster at a dance is like, yeah, well, that's great for the last song, but you're going to do a whole night of that and nobody gets to dance because everything's like stupid fast and you know. But and then we had a couple of kind of excuses to write original songs, like Nick Williams did his Jitterblast project, and then there was we ended up being in the background of The Bachelorette on ABC, and they needed some license-free music, so I created some stuff for them. And as it turned out, just writing original tunes just kind of became a new part of our arsenal. And then like the California Balboa Classic, kind of asked specifically for me to create contest music. And like the original goal of that was like, I want you to play 8 amazing killer dillers, but that are shrunk down to a minute and a half, and like, but the recognizable, play the hits. And I was like, well, if I play a minute and a half of a killer diller, I'm just going to play the loud parts and you're going to kill the brass. And this is supposed to be on top of playing a full 3-set gig. And so I was like, wait a second, what if I write original music that like kind of deliberately takes it easy on the brass so they don't die? And we did that the first year in 2019. And I was like, I mostly kind of picked like melodies from small group tunes that already existed and like arrange them for a big band. Like what would it be if we took um, A Woman's Places in the Groove by Vivian Gary and like made that a big band song? Or what if we took The Lion's Roar by Leo Parker and made that a big band tune? And then I was like, oh wow, I've got all these different colors I can do, and I can have like call and response with the sections. But then the second year for 2020, I was like, let's see how many original songs I can write. And I wrote like 7 original songs and these great arrangements. And you famously danced to one of them in the contest and crushed it.
And I have to say, like, being like, what an honor for me to be able to like dance to Jonathan Stout for a spotlight. That's a song that was created for that moment, and so well designed, and for like bringing out everything that we try to bring out.
You know, and while serving the mission of making it easy on the brass. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
it's easy to forget the brass, poor brass.
yeah. You know, I did some things on that, like every one of those songs when the contestants danced to them, like unless they snuck into sound check, they'd never heard that song. And I made a point that rather than kind of doing it formulaically, like, okay, an 8-bar intro, play a chorus, and then play half a chorus, and then it's done, I tried to make every song have a different arrangement as far as like, you know, just so it would be off what the previous one was. So if the one song's a blues, the next song is going to be a 32-bar song, and then like I'll stick a 4-bar interlude here, and then you know the song Bugle Call Rag?
Yeah.
The thing about Bugle Call Rag is it starts out as a blues, you know, A B, or you know, the 3-4 bar things, you know, a call, and then the kind of response. There's something called an 8-bar blues, which is what that song turns into, because after the that's sort of the first 4, and then it answers, and then it, you know, does that. Once that kind of those stops are done, it just turns into where you jump to that 5th bar and you just do an 8-bar blues. So it's like the back half sort of. And so like doing little things where it jumps to that, just so it's not the same 12 bars every time. I really tried to like design it so that it would have novel structures and have little things and breaks and things that you could hit. But like that was a really great excuse. You know, it was a really great kind of like, well, we need this, because otherwise I don't think I would have created those songs. I wouldn't have thought to, because I've got like 30 Ellington songs and 30 Basie songs and 30 Lunsford songs and 30 Chick Webb songs that I've all got competing for my attention on every big band gig. But you know, that was an important thing to like have this reason to do it. And then, you know, the pandemic happened and I was stuck at home, and I ended up writing some original tunes, and those ended up being on our last CD, Humming to Myself. And it was like, oh
A
wow,
fantastic album that everyone should get if they like it.
yeah, maybe you should get it this Friday, November 4th, when it's Bandcamp Friday, and you get all of our CDs, and we'll get an extra 10% because Bandcamp forgoes their cut. I was actually toying on whether or not to do a pre-launch on Bandcamp, which is where the thing goes up and people can start buying it now, but it'll be released, you know, on the day, or whether I should just leave it off and then put it up on that day. Because if you buy it before Bandcamp Friday, even though it doesn't come out till Bandcamp Friday, we don't get that extra 10%. So I decided to hold off. But Bandcamp being the best place that you can buy music to support artists. And Mint Julep's got a new record. There's 4 great Michael Gamble projects that you should check out that were done during the pandemic. They're on Bandcamp. Candy Jacket has a bunch of CDs. And so you should get all of those on Friday, and also pick up Let It Snow. But I'll just to echo to pick up where we left off, the last thing I'll say is, you know, the pandemic was a long time for us to all sit down and stop and think. And there has been a lot of work done during that time about all of our places in this thing, especially because what we are practicing is a Black American art form, and that's where it comes from. And just really wrestling with that, as you know, I'm not a Black person, as anybody watching can tell, and trying to kind of reckon with that. And we've done things like paid people to consult with us on our approach, and like, is what we're doing appropriation or appreciation. And I think we've hopefully done an okay job. That so much about what we've done for the last 20 years is honoring those artists. Like, I don't announce it like, look at me, I'm so great, look at this song that I decided to play. It's like, no, this is about Charlie Christian, this is about Lester Young. Something like Lindy Focus is really about those artists and contextualizing them. And I can't talk that much at every dance, but like when I can, I try to like give the context of these stories. And we've been really reckoning with that, even though I think we've hopefully been mostly about honoring those people. But I was really uncomfortable with where that left, like creating original material, because I've never thought, I mean, like if things like Big Bad Voodoo Daddy was as original material was good enough, then we would have stayed there. But like so many of us that were dancing back then were like, no, let's get to the real stuff, the true stuff. And so to create original material was always sort of weird for me. But hearing Latasha on that NPR story talking about it, and Felix, and kind of reconciling with what their place is in tradition, it really helped me kind of focus it a lot, and that I need to participate in the tradition to keep it going forward.
Oh, the weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we've no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. It doesn't show signs of stopping, and I brought some corn for popping. The lights are turned way down low. Let it snow, let it snow, let it snow. When we find...
All right, so we've got some personnel to talk about on this album. We've got some new things going on. So first off, I noticed that there's a really incredible slide guitar happening on the album. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Mele Kalikimaka is one of those like, very late 40s, early 50s kind of songs, and it's an up-tempo tune. I thought, that'd be a good kind of bal tempo kind of banger to put on the album. And I had toyed with trying to play steel guitar myself. And we actually recorded some of these songs originally back when we did our second to last record, so back in 2013. So that's how long this kind of project has been in gestation. And we did a version where like for the intro, like I put my guitar flat on my lap and tried to play it with a bar, and like kind of did the outro, kind of the lick that he plays at the end, where da da da, da, like kind of creeping up. Like I tried to play that. But part of it was I went to Hawaii with my wife and son. That's where we honeymooned, and so like that's just one of our favorite places to go. And when we visited there, I really fell in love with kind of the music of 1930s and 40s Hawaii. And there's all this really beautiful early electric steel guitar. And the thing about it is there's all these jazz elements, but there's also all this traditional Hawaiian melody and traditional Hawaiian culture baked into it. And I really loved it. And I've one of my favorite bands working now is a band called the Alcatraz Islanders in San Francisco. And my friend Mikiya Matsuda is the leader and steel player of that. He's also a first-rate swing bass player. So if you go to San Francisco, you'll very likely see him playing bass on any number of gigs up there. He plays with my friend Nick Rossi a bunch. He plays with a lot of people up there. But he's also this just masterful steel player. And I hit him up when we were going, because in 2021, I had a lot of frequent flyer miles built up over the years. And I was like, well, it was like just pre-Delta wave. And I was like, we're going to Hawaii. I'm using all my frequent flyer miles. We're like, this is going to be the cheapest trip we've ever done. We're just going to do it quick. And like I hit up Mikiya, and he like hooked me up with a really fantastic player there named Jeff Ahoy. And it was, and we had this jam session that was just amazing. So I've just been really enraptured with steel guitar. And I got back home and I borrowed a lap steel from a friend and worked at it for a while and still suck. It's really hard. It's not tuned at all like a guitar. So like all of the shapes and the things you would think to play, they're not where you would think. And that's part of the magic of that instrument. And so that right after that was last December. And when I was trying to play steel, and then I sort of got it to the point where I could play the melody of Mele Kalikimaka and then play that little kind of high part at the end, but I couldn't like solo on it meaningfully. And I was like, oh no, I'm going to have to bring in a ringer. And so Mikiya was at the top of the list, but there were a couple other people that if he wouldn't be able to do it, I was going to reach out to, but we were able to bring Mikiya in on this. And that was really cool because Mikiya is not just somebody that has an understanding of traditional Hawaiian steel playing. He's also a jazz musician who loves the same kind of jazz that I do and we do. And so in the intermeeting times, we both got hired to teach at this guitar camp called Red Hot Strings. And it's also for mandolin and banjo and violin and like any kind of old-timey acoustic stringed instrument, but jazz. It's run by Matt Munasteri, and he hired Mikiya and I and several other really killer players. And I ended up not being able to go because I got COVID.
Oh,
which sucked because I had managed to avoid that the entire pandemic and then got it Memorial Day week, right before Memorial Day weekend this year. But I was able to watch some of the lessons online, and like I taught my lessons online. And one of the things Mikiya did, or maybe it was the year before, because we did it online the previous year, just fully online. And Mikiya did this class talking about two different historical Western steel players, Joaquin Murphy and Wade Bott. Was it Wade Bott? I can't remember who the other one was, but he was talking about like one of them plays like a clarinet player and the other one plays like a trombone player. And I immediately had this frame of reference to be like, yeah, so like the outro of this Mele Kalikimaka is kind of a not Dixieland, but like a traditional jazz communal improv rave up. And, you know, I've got tenor, which is the low voice. I've got trumpet, which is the middle voice. And like what it needs is a clarinet. And so I was able to give him that instruction. And that's exactly where he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to be the guy floating above top. So yeah, that just worked out really beautifully. And we weren't able to make it so that he was actually in studio with us, but I was really happy the way that the space we left for him and the things we didn't leave space for, like he reacted to in a way that it feels really, you know, like of the moment.
Man, it's so amazing when I hear stuff like, oh yeah, that person wasn't in the room at the time, they recorded it later, and like that's so amazing how like it can. I've heard recordings where that's obviously the case, and you're like, oh yeah, that wasn't exactly. I could tell they weren't in the same room, but when like you hear it all working together, you're like, what? They weren't even in the same room?
Yeah, I mean, everyone else was in the same room.
Yeah.
Hillary was in a vocal booth, but we all, you know, we're all doing it at the same time. But
yeah, that steel guitar's presence is so important in that song, and to have it feel like it's like right there with the group the whole time is it's incredible.
I think we all got better at doing that because of the pandemic. But you know, I mean, there's nothing better than like one musician doing something and then the drummer catching it or the piano player catching it. And so, you know, I'm glad that it worked out, but like the next time we have special guests, like they're going to be in the room with us. But now I just got to find an excuse to get Mikiya down here to play the song with us. And hopefully I can be an Alcatraz Islander for the day, because that's actually, I think is my actual favorite band to play with. I mean, I ordinarily, I would say, you know, the bands that aren't mine, my favorites are, you know, Michael Gamble and Candy Jacket and stuff. But I think the Alcatraz Islanders, because I get to do it so rarely and it's such a different thing. It's my favorite kind of guest spot. But yeah, but other than Mikiya, you know, we've basically got, the same Campus 5 that has been around for the last 20 years. Um, uh, Josh Collazo, of course, probably the world's greatest living swing drummer, probably being something I'm saying just to be kind to anybody else. um, Chris Dawson on piano, Jim Ziegler on trumpet, Albert Alva on tenor and clarinet. And these are all people that, are all stars in their own right. They played at Lindy Focus, all of them. But they're all of the people that were there on the first night of the Campus 5 on July 29th, 2002, literally 20 years ago. And they've been on every record. And as much as, Hillary and I own the band, and like, it's our band, we make the choices. And, people can come and go. And sometimes people aren't available for a gig, so you got to use a sub or whatever. But like, all of those people are the people that we built the sound of the band around. And when I started, when we started this thing, like, I didn't know what it was going to be. And I assumed it would be a lot more of a potpourri of different kind of various styles of swing. I assumed we'd do several Django numbers every set. I assumed we'd do like a Charleston number. I assumed I'd do like one, like, Louis Jordan number, and like it would be like a broader thing. And when I heard what these musicians played, it very quickly, like, even within 6 months, it really coalesced around what you hear on our first album. And then within the next year, like, it really coalesced into like a lot of these mid 40s small group sessions, like Illinois Jacquet and Coleman Hawkins and Cootie Williams and stuff. And then sort of being inspired by that sound, that and the Goodman sextets. So like, I'm really happy that all of those people have been along for the ride, and that, the sound of this album is the sound of them, and it's kind of the sound that they make together. Yeah.
So how's Albert doing?
Albert is, so for anybody that doesn't know, like 4 days before Camp Hollywood this year, our first Camp Hollywood back post-pandemic, Albert actually had a stroke, and he was rushed to the hospital. And we didn't know what the prognosis looked like for a while. And not only just like, would we still have an Albert at the end of this? But like, even if we did have an Albert, like, would he be able to survive? Would he be able to, like, like so many Americans, like a medical emergency can just completely ruin your financial life. And so a group of us banded together very quickly. Adam Brzezowski, Josh Collazo, myself, Hillary. We kind of formed this ad hoc committee to like, what are we going to do to help Albert? And very quickly we figured out that Jason Swihart and the folks at the Pacific Swing Dance Foundation would be able to be the architecture for a campaign. And basically, with like, without any real proper social media strategy, we just like launched a crowdfunding campaign to try and help Albert. And with the visibility of Camp Hollywood weekend, being able to announce it and kind of spread the message worldwide, we were able to raise like over $40,000 for Albert. And since then, his progress has been somewhat astounding, because he had paralysis on his right side. So, that's playing the saxophone, that's writing, his leg, that's walking. Like, these are important things that if you don't have half your body, you can't do. But within, I think, 3 weeks, he was able to go home because he was able to walk unassisted. The big thing financially was going to be would he need to be inpatient, which is just, thousands of dollars a day and all that stuff, either because he couldn't look after himself, or because he needed inpatient physical therapy. Because the number one thing is, the sooner he can start physical therapy and be rebuilding his function, that's the best thing for his outcomes. But as it turns out, after 3 weeks, he was able to go home and take care of himself and not need like an in-home aid, because again, thousands of dollars a day. And he was able to get into this really great outpatient accelerated physical therapy. And a lot of people have reached out to him with resources and have worked with him. And so last Tuesday, he showed up at our gig, and just to say hi and to say thank you. And you've never been so happy to see somebody before in your whole life. It's really special to have him there. And he's been able to resume his job teaching at a college, teaching music. But so far, he has not been able to get back to playing saxophone. He's not able to drive yet. And so that money is going to go a long way toward, Lyft rides from his house to his job, basically. And a lot of stuff like that. And he does have some family support, which is good. But it's just so much better than it could have been. But I know that Albert's a really humble guy. And he actually asked, once his prognosis sort of improved significantly, he actually asked them to pause the fundraising, because he didn't want to take too much. And he felt like people that didn't have enough were giving to him. And he was like, no, don't do that. And I think that's partially just him being, a beautiful guy. But I was like, Albert, this money's going to run out, and you're going to still be doing Lyft rides or whatever the thing you're going to need. And so what we're doing at the moment is, for Camp Hollywood, Josh actually designed these Albert Alva fan club buttons, and he made them by hand and just gave them to people to like spread the word about what happened and to donate. And another drummer that we work with here in town, Gareth Price, actually decided, I'm going to make a run of those buttons on my dime, and whatever you can sell them for or get people to donate for, that'll just be like extra money that'll come in later. So right now, if you show up at a Campus 5 gig, I'll have them at Lindy Focus. I'm going to have Albert Alva fan club buttons, and just for whatever donation you can make, you can pick up an Albert Alva fan club button, and we're just going to hook Albert up with all of that, but the prognosis is definitely good. I don't know when he'll be able to come back and play saxophone with us, but I have a feeling that it will happen, and, and sooner rather than later. But, when we talk about him, like when I announce him on stage, we call him the heart and soul of the Campus 5, because that's exactly what he is. And between being a mentor for these last 20 years for me and Josh, like, he's taught Josh how to arrange and help Josh with many of the Candy Jacket arrangements. And he's, he always double checks my work. And like, I'll write, it's sort of a different thing when you write for 2 horns versus when you write for like 4. So when you write for 4, there's kind of a formula, and you can spell all the notes of the chord with all those voices, and it makes a lot of sense. When you're only writing for 2, it's actually sort of a different art form. And I still struggle with that sometimes. So I'll write like a tenor line in harmony below the trumpet for like the Campus 5. And I'll come back like the next time we play it, and I'll notice there's penciled in totally different harmonies. And I was like, okay, I'll fix that. Thanks, Albert, for unmessing up my work. And he's just like such an important part of what we do. We've been really missing him, but like I said, it's so much better than it could have been. And
you can hear Albert on the album.
Yeah. We did it the month before that, or 2 months before that happened, and it was really great because we had been asked to help support the show Swing Out when it came to Los Angeles, and so Eyal's band was obviously on stage, but the way they did it because of COVID, they basically did the first half of the show in the auditorium, and then came out onto the plaza at the music center here in Los Angeles, and did the second half of the show in the plaza. But because there would be that switchover time, they're like, well, we need another band to play that intermediate time, and then since we're going to have this, why don't we just have a whole other set after the show is over for people to just hang around and dance? And they asked us to do it, which was a really great thing. And so we had actually played like 3 days in a row, and then had a day off, and then went straight into playing the record. So I felt like the band was really like in good form. And Albert just sounds great.
Well, we're glad to hear it, and we have best wishes for Albert, and so excited about the new album. And yeah, I can't. It's awesome. All right, and there's a new bass player, right?
Yeah. So our longstanding bass player of the last 15 years, Wally Hersom, decided to semi-temporarily relocate to Europe. And so he left last November, and it was hard to figure out which one of the various great bass players we have in LA would be like the first call for a lot of things. Because Wally's been a really important part of our sound, not just live, but also in studio, because he recorded as the engineer at his studio in his garage half of what's our fourth CD called? Spreading Rhythm Around. All right. He recorded half of Spreading Rhythm Around, and he mixed it. We recorded Humming to Myself at a really amazing old studio in Los Angeles. That's like, they did the Godfather theme there. Sinatra sang New York, New York. Elvis did the 68 comeback special there. Michael Jackson did Thriller, like important room. And we did it in the big room where like, that's where the orchestras go for like I said, like the Godfather theme, the MASH theme, stuff like that. But Wally mixed that. And so Wally's been a really important part of our recorded sound for a long time. And then one of the things about Wally is not only is he just a great bass player, but we've taken him to Budapest, Bordeaux, Seoul, and plus a lot of places around the country. And no matter what rental bass they give him, no matter how it's set up, he just takes the strings off. He puts his gut strings on. He has the pickup he uses. He's got a preamp. And whatever gear they give him, he manages to make it sound like it's supposed to sound. And that's just been one of these great things that's allowed us to like have a really great consistency wherever we play. That like, I know if Wally's on the gig, the bass is going to sound like it's supposed to sound. And like Josh is the same way, where like they give him like a bebop kit, and like it's not as good as if he had a big bass drum, but he'll bring his cymbals and he'll get it tuned up so that it works like it's supposed to. Meanwhile, I'm sitting over there futzing with a guitar amp, like, why can't I make this? But they're just so good at what they do. They make it sound right. But Wally leaving, kind of left a hole in the band. And we've got several really great bass players that we work with here in LA. But as it turns out, somebody moved down from San Francisco, and it was someone that we'd been wanting to work with for probably 5 years. Because Josh had gone to a jazz festival and played with this guy Sam Rocha, and he came back and was like, "Oh man, this guy's great." And his main kind of gig was that he was the bass player in the Hot Club of San Francisco, which is a very, very busy Django style band, and one of the oldest Django style bands in America. And so between kind of being a jazz festival all-star and the Hot Club, every time we'd go to San Francisco to do a gig and we'd need to use a local bass player, I'd call Sam, and he was never available. And I did get to do a gig once where I got to sit in for like 3 songs. My friend Nick Rossi had a trio gig, and it was Paul Melling from the Hot Club and Sam. And those 3 songs are the best guitar playing I've ever done in my life. I don't know what magic happened. Like, did I eat at this hour and I had a shot of espresso at that hour, and then I had a cocktail at the bar, right? But like, what was the I don't know what it was, but that was like the best guitar playing I've ever done in my life. And the interaction between the three of us was just like, you know, one of those like magic moments. And so I'd gotten to play with Sam like once, and then he moves to LA. I'm like, oh my gosh, perfect. And I guess we'd gotten to play together a couple times in another band, but like not with Josh and not like doing what the Campus 5 does. And we finally got him on a Campus 5 gig, and it was like, oh yeah, this is the guy. This is the guy that we needed to fill this spot. And, you know, one of the things about Sam is that he's from San Francisco, and, you know, he grew up playing traditional jazz. So it's something he's been doing for a long time. And, you know, somebody like Clint Baker is a really great mentor to a lot of people up in San Francisco in the traditional jazz world. You know, he's been in all the trad bands up there. He's played with the Boilermakers off and on for years whenever they would come out there. And I think he's on a couple of their records. But he was also a mentor to like a bunch of the dancers that started playing in bands that turned into the Hot Baked Goods and like Near-Ob's bands and stuff. And he was a really great mentor figure for them. So he's somebody that also mentored Sam in a lot of ways, and got Sam to not just play bass, but Sam also plays great traditional jazz cornet. And there's something about having a bass soloist that can also phrase like a horn player is kind of there's a whole thing there. And Sam does great work with a bow. And I'd asked him like, hey, do you ever like bow and sing at the same time, like Slam Stewart? He's like, oh yeah, no, I love doing that. That's really fun. I said, you know, I've got this tune Fa, which is in our book. It's a Goodman sextet tune that Slam Stewart was on, and it's kind of a bass feature. Like, would you be up for that? He's like, oh yeah. And he just slayed it. He just slayed it so great. And what I realized right then is like, I'd had people do that, and sometimes they would just bow, sometimes they would sing. But when we did it live, like I wouldn't give them a vocal mic, so nobody but me really heard the singing because I'm sitting right in front of the bass. And I started realizing, oh no, give the bass player a vocal mic so that they can do that. And all of a sudden it was like this whole new voice that we could add to the band. And the way that usually works is a person's voice is often an octave above where the bass would be. So you end up getting this, like, you end up taking the bass solo and having it be a little bit higher because it's low and high at the same time. So it's almost like you're raising the pitch of the bass up an octave so that it's in a more normal audible range. And it really lets the bass cut through so that a bass solo isn't just like the adults talking on the Peanuts, you know, wah, 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 wah. You know, it's like you can hear it. So that's been a really cool thing. I actually wrote a bass feature for him that will probably be on whatever the next non-holiday album we do, just to like give him a platform to do that. But I was really excited to feature him on that on one song. So we threw that on Santa Claus Is Coming to Town. Like I said, it was really exciting to get to feature that new voice. And then he's got a bass solo on Hanukkah, and he kind of quotes Big Noise from Winnetka for a second, which is another famous kind of bass drum thing. Yeah, it's been really exciting to bring this new person in with this like existing core and see how, you know, these same four people can be inspired by like this new person coming in. And it just kind of reminds me of like when, you know, Benny had been doing quartets and quintets and small groups, you know, starting in the mid 30s featuring Teddy Wilson and then adding Lionel Hampton. And then, you know, after some of that talent left, he was still doing those things. They just aren't as regarded. And it wasn't until he ran into Charlie Christian that there was this like spark of creativity. And it wasn't just Charlie coming into the band. It was the effect Charlie had on everybody else. And it really like re-inspired Goodman in a lot of ways. So I feel like having Sam come in has been like a nice way to have that effect. But then, you know, like anytime you choose to work with one person, it means you can't work with a different person. And so like having Wally still mix and master and edit this album was like this great way to have Wally still involved and make it one of the few people I trust to make it sound like a Campus 5 album. So that was a really nice kind of bookend to all of that.
Little Jack Frost toes. Freeze up the ground and take the bloom from the rose. So, little Jack Frost, go away, go away. And don't you come back another day. There's lots.
Oh man, so this album, we have the first fully originally arranged Campus 5 album. We have the new bassist on. We have the same engineer behind keeping the sound. It's all holiday music, but it's not the holiday music that you would traditionally hear in the small stuff in your retail stores. And so you're going to make me walk around New York for the next 3 months wishing that they had your album rather than whatever album they're playing. And we've got like the first taste of the next flavor of what the core band is going to be like with the new bassist. So man, what a lot going on in this album. A lot happened. It's like a touchstone for a lot of things going on.
Yeah, I mean, in the sake of transparency, I asked you to do this interview. I was like, we have no swing press anymore except for your blog. We had Ryan's podcast, and like, there's not that much else that's really what reaches the whole swing community. And I was like, there's so much going on with this album that I really want to tell the story of all this, what it means. And so, I mean, exactly what you just said, it is all of those things. It's a sign of where the Campus 5 goes next when we record another album, where it's going to be a lot of original tunes and original arrangements. And it's going to have, sort of same great taste, less filling. I don't know. But it's got a lot of those things going forward, but like also going in a new direction in some ways. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I'm very excited about it in a way that is funny, because I really don't want to shove Christmas music down people's throats, because I know there are plenty of people who are like, oh, Christmas music, I hate this. And especially like launching it as we are November 4th, like the last 2 weeks, it's not even been Halloween yet. And I'm like, but I want to talk about my Christmas album and and it's like, whoa, listen, retail store changing your holiday decorations 3 months early, like chill. I mean, I'm definitely somebody that like, I feel like I want Christmas to start the day after Thanksgiving. Like I want the holiday season to start after that. I'm like, I like having these things I like holidays, but I also don't want to just have this crass commercialism and all of that stuff kind of like, so not in something that'll surprise no one, a religious holiday that also has a secular aspect to it, and that there are also plenty of people that don't celebrate that religious holiday. There's a lot going on with all of that cultural interaction. There's there's a lot there. So it's been something that I've been really excited about, but I've also been like, I can't like get all excited about it in front of people yet, because it's like, wait, but now Halloween's over, so.
And so I knew it was gonna be damn good, just of the fact that it's a project that you're on and the people that you work with. And so I was like, yeah, Christmas album, I'm sure that'll be great, cool. But I am one of those people who's like, great Christmas songs, yay. And then having heard the album, it's like, damn, this is great swing music. Like, and it makes me, it's not the, like, again, we keep saying it's not the like schmaltzy earbug style. It's just a really, like, you're thumping your foot and moving your head to this album. And it also, like, I think something that dawned on me throughout listening to the album and our conversation here is the fact that, like, I think some people might think that a swing band or a jazz band making a Christmas album is maybe like that easy thing. Like, okay, we just take the standards, we do them up, we get some good pocket change because everyone listens to Christmas music at some point, and then that kind of helps fuel the next artistic endeavor that we do. And this is, first off, it was very difficult for you to create this album. It wasn't easy. You had to rearrange every single song and bring a new life to it and listen to all the things that you talked about, like all the things that you have to listen to and all the things you have to plan for. And then on top of it all, like, it's a very personal album. It's not just like a one-off thing. Like, there's a lot of things, so many things going on behind it. That's just really cool. And I think important for people to know, if they hadn't already, if they did think that Christmas easy grab bag. It does not seem to be the case.
Well, I think it can be easy. And, you know, there's all these choices that we made where like I could have just tried to copy some version on every one of these songs. And I like, you know, there's things like I think I stole the backgrounds behind the vocal on I've Got My Love to Keep Me Warm from like the Ray Noble version, or maybe it's the Red Norvo version. I can't remember. But like, you know, like there's a little bit of here and there's a little bit of there, but like the rest of this arrangement isn't just like that big band version. I just kind of like, they had some nice accents of like where the background's hit. And I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. I'll just kind of borrow that. And, you know, but it can be easy to just like be like, okay, play Frosty. We'll all play, you know, the trumpet will play the melody. Everyone else will noodle around it. And then we'll go around in solos and then the song, and then we'll do that again. And then it's over.
And we'll overdub sleigh bells.
Yeah, and we'll overdub sleigh bells, exactly. But yeah, like making it so these songs have an arc, like that's sort of always been something that's been important to me, is like I don't want to play a 5-minute song over and over and over again, because we all have to dance to that and we need something that's inspiring, and it's not just like this like this formulaic thing. And the best small group swing records, even if they are kind of just we play the melody and they go around, there's still an arc to them that's deliberate. Like all of those Benny Goodman sextet records, I know Gamble and I have talked about this, that like they're just the most perfectly arranged, but they're also so barely arranged. You know, it's like you've done the least work, like, but it's just the right amount. And I think like, you know, with cooking, sometimes it's like if you have really great ingredients, you just need to set them up and get out of the way. So like that can be the thing, but then sometimes it's like, well, yeah, but you want to do more, and then you can transform something, and that's cool. Or if like maybe the ingredient is, you know, like chuck roast is not something you want to have as a steak, you want to have that as a braise because you need to work harder at it. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that all turned out. And the last thing I wanted to say is the reason that this album came out is because Knott's Berry Farm, this theme park here in Los Angeles, in Orange County, actually, happened to hire us to do a run of Christmas shows. And I had about 7 or 8 Christmas songs in our repertoire. And they said, yeah, you play like half Christmas, half not, you know. And I said, okay. But I wasn't content to that. And I was like, I'm going to use this as an excuse to write arrangements. And basically like the second half of the album came from this month of shows we did at Knott's, where I just wanted to get more and more. And that's basically what happened. And I'm excited because we're going to have an album release for this at the Airliner here in Los Angeles on December 3rd. Yeah, Saturday, December 3rd. And we're going to do one other Campus 5 gig publicly at Atomic Ballroom on the 23rd, kind of a campus Christmas with the Campus 5. But we're also going to do like 7 shows at Knott's, and it's for like a non-swing dance crowd. And I'm excited to kind of share that with the public and give them an excuse to like learn about Fats Waller. Because when we start the set with Moppin' and Boppin', they're going to go, oh, I'll go look that up. So
fantastic.
Thank you so much for talking to me, man. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, there's been like 12 stories or things that I could throw at you to geek out more that you wouldn't necessarily be part of the recording. There'd just be a fun conversation, but I know you're probably pretty busy. So,
well, our recording's going to end in less than a minute, so we're going to end the recording there, and then you and I can keep chatting if you want.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, cheers, man.